So I'd like to welcome everyone. I'll just remind you that we are recording. So, and if you could keep yourselves on mute for the early part of this, that would be great. We will do some Q&A towards the end. Just to give you a sense of what will be just about a half hour, I'm going to say a few words up top here. I will then introduce our speaker, Sandy, and then we will have some time for just some light Q&A at the end. If you don't know who I am, especially sophomore parents who this might be your first sort of college advising event, I'm Lauren Cook. I am your Dean of College and Gap Year Advising. Welcome. And junior parents, it is good to see all of you. We've been spending some more time together on Zoom, so hope everyone is well. The purpose of this session is really in the title. It's just a basic introduction to financial aid. Typically, we do kind of one fell swoop in the winter, but that can be a lot to do in a 90-minute session. So I thought take advantage of Zoom life here and kind of break it up into two different things. So this is meant to be a general overview. It's great for folks who have not had a child go off to college yet. You haven't sat through a financial aid session, or maybe you just like the repetition and want to continue to try and get the lingo down here, which is perfectly reasonable. I learn something new every time I sit through one of these sessions. For a deeper dive into the process, on March 8th, we will have a session called Planning Ahead to Pay for College. This will be particularly important for junior parents that will be a few months away from the process, but I think sophomore folks will be welcome to come as well if you're curious. That will be a deeper dive into forms, deadlines, taxes, all the rest. So those more granular questions we're not going to get to today, but definitely make note of things that are coming up for yourself if you want to attend that March 8th session and get some more detail. So I'm not going to waste any more time here. Want to introduce our guest, San Sundstrom, who is the Director of Financial Aid at Reed College up in Portland, Oregon. Excellent liberal arts college. She's been there for 5 years, celebrating her anniversary this month, and has been at a number of other great schools before Reed Carleton and St. Olaf in Minnesota. So a lot of expertise, and we're really happy to have you here, Sandy. So I'll turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate it. I was just telling Lauren too, we're going to have a snowstorm tonight here in Portland. So the city's getting ready to close down because they're not set up for ice, and it's not Minnesota and they don't know how to drive. So I'm actually quite relieved that they're going to close it all down, because it's more frightening to drive Portland in the snow than it was Minnesota for 5 months of winter. So yes, it's good to be here. I moved here 5 years ago. I've been in financial aid about 25 years, which lots of experience with that. But also I think what's important is we've put 4 children through college, started in 2008. And the last one just finished in 2016. So I've been tuition-free payments for 4 years. No, it just ended in 2018. So yes, I've only had 2 years, a little over 2 years of not having tuition payments. So we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. If while I'm talking, you have a question and you think of it and you just want to put that in the chat, we can address it at the end. And then we will, I do want to save time for Q&A, because I think that's really important for you to have that opportunity as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope. Did that work?
Yep, we can see.
Yes.
You might want
to see it. Oh, I'll put it on. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we are going to go ahead and what we'll talk about today, just broadly, the definition of financial aid, kind of the timeline that families are looking at, what to expect, and when that should happen, the various types and sources of aid that you might be offered, the application process, how schools will determine eligibility for financial assistance, talking a little bit about net price calculators, special circumstances for you parents who have filled out applications in the past, maybe the FAFSA or a CSS profile. You might have realized that it's really hard to indicate to a school if you've had any kind of a change in your financial situation. And then, of course, time for questions. So just very briefly, financial aid is really what it sounds like. Financial assistance provided to students and families to help pay for their post-secondary educational expenses. And when we look at the timeline, it kind of all falls together with the admission process. So students are going to, apply to admission at the various colleges that they're looking at. They also will complete their financial aid application or applications depending upon the type of school that they are applying to. And we'll talk about the applications in more detail in a little bit, but financial aid applications are always going to include the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. And the CSS profile may be required depending upon the institution. And then the institution itself might have their own independent application, scholarship application, or something of that nature if required. So we'll break that down in a little bit. And then once those applications are submitted, typically then the student is notified through the admission process, whether they've been admitted, waitlisted, denied. If they're admitted and they've applied for financial aid, shortly thereafter, they should receive a financial aid eligibility notification from the aid office. So that's the typical timeline for when those things happen. And that, okay. So categories of aid. I think just very broadly, when we look at financial aid, they usually fall into two buckets. That the money that's provided to students, that's based on their need. So in the financial aid office, we work a lot with the need-based aid. So that'll be assistance that's provided based on a family's income and assets and things like that. Where non-need-based aid is assistance provided to families that has nothing to do with their financial situation. So those are kind of the main categories of financial aid. And I don't know why my mouse won't go forward. Click. Okay, let's try this. Oh, there we go. Okay. So types of financial aid. We have grants, typically are based on demonstrated need. So that would be a type of assistance. Grants, again, are types of monies that don't need to be repaid. They're often referred to as gift aid. Grants typically based on need. Scholarships typically not based on need, but maybe more of a merit type situation. Student loans, parent loans can be based on need or not based on need. That can go either way, as well as student work. There can be need-based student work, and some colleges might offer work awards to students who don't have financial need. And so all of those types of aid come together to typically to form a financial aid award for the student. Just a little bit more on this. Grants, again, typically based on need. Scholarships, typically based on merit, maybe an academic scholarship or an athletic scholarship. If it's a college that awards athletic aid, maybe they have scholarships based on leadership. When I worked at St. Olaf College, we had a lot of scholarship based on music ability. So, and again, those are all scholarships that are awarded outside of the financial aid office, typically through the admission department or the music department or the art department. It depends upon the scholarship, but financial aid office, we don't pick merit scholarship recipients. That usually takes place through the admission process. And then, like I said, loans can be either need-based or non-need based. And there are federal loan programs for both students and parents. And you don't need to get into the weeds on loans right now, but I think it's good to know at this point that students, even though they may be 17, 18 years old, are eligible to borrow loans through the federal government without a cosigner, just strictly based on the fact that they are students in a degree seeking program at a college. So they are eligible for that, to borrow that on their own. Parents, if they do wish to borrow a loan, parent loan, there is a credit check, and it's a little bit different for parents, but students borrowing for the federal loan program are not required to pass any type of a credit check or have a cosigner to qualify for those loans. There are private loans available too, and those are loans that don't go through the federal government. They may go through a bank. Those are variable interest rates, would require a creditworthy cosigner, usually variable interest rates on those, where the federal loan program has a fixed interest rate. This year, the student loan rate is 2.75% interest rate on a federal loan. So a little bit lower than what a student might get in a private loan. And those vary each year. They get set every June for the upcoming academic year, but then that loan interest rate is set for the life of the loan. And then real quickly, student work or work study, that allows students to work on campus and earn money to help cover their educational costs. So you may see a student work award in a financial aid package as well. And then where does this money come from? So starting with the federal government is the largest provider of the loan funding to students across the country, students and parents borrowing loans. The federal government also provides assistance in the form of the federal Pell Grant to students with low incomes. You might have heard of that. So the federal Pell Grant program, but the majority of the money that comes from the federal government is in the form of student loans. The state, so California has their own state programs that I already spoke to Lauren about that she would be more of your expert than I would, being in Oregon. So if you do have questions on any state programs, I know Lauren would be a great resource for you there. And then the private sources, those would be private scholarships, outside scholarships. Those are funds that students go out and find on their own. They apply for those funds outside of the college. And typically I tell families the best resource for looking for any of those private resources is through your high school, through your guidance office. They have the best resources and they know the types of scholarships students from your school have received in the past. There's a lot of free websites out there. I would just caution you to not work with a company that's going to charge you a fee and guarantee that they can find you some type of scholarship assistance. 25 years of doing this, I haven't seen one that's been able to do that. And I have seen families that have paid sometimes significant money to find out that really what they were told is something that they could have figured out by doing a simple Google search. So just think about that as you're working with your student on that. It's early if you're a sophomore and even a junior at this point, but think about that. And I know Lauren in the guidance offices typically remind students about deadlines and when to start thinking about these things. And then the institutions, they're actually the largest provider of the grants and scholarships that students receive. That money comes from the college or the university itself. So you might get a financial aid package that has money from the college, maybe a federal loan, and maybe something from the state, and maybe the student has an outside scholarship. So it can come from a variety of sources, grants, scholarships, loans, and work. So real briefly on how to apply the FAFSA, a lot of parents have done a FAFSA. If you've had other students go to college, you would complete the free application for federal student aid. And then some schools will also require additional applications, such as the CSS Profile, College Board product. It may or may not be required. And then some, like I mentioned earlier, some schools have their own institutional aid application. So just be aware, check each school's website to find out what forms they require and when they need to be filed. That's your best way. But typically, well, I'll talk about that here. The FAFSA is, again, the federal form. It's going to collect your family information. It's used to calculate something that is called the expected family contribution, or EFC. And I was so thrilled after 25 years of having to explain to families that it's not really what you're going to pay. It's the most confusing aspect, I think, of financial aid. the federal government just changed it for the, I think it's the 23-24 academic year. It's going to be called like a student aid eligibility indicator or something like that. So it's not, you don't have, you're going to see this number and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I have to pay this much. This is what my bill is going to be to the college. That's not what it is. So I'm really, really glad that 20 some years later, we're going to call it what it really is. It's an aid eligibility indicator, not an EFC. And divorced or separated parents, I always get this question, like which parent gets reported on the FAFSA. So if the parents are divorced or separated, the current, what you're going to be doing if you're junior, the current regulation says that you're going to report the parent with whom the student lived the most the prior school year. So where that student lived. If it's joint custody and they're actually at both places an equal amount of time, then you're going to list the parent that provides the most financial support. And there's kind of a way. And then if it's exactly even on all fronts, then I just say pick a parent, it doesn't matter. So, and if that parent is remarried, they include the information for the step parent as well on the FAFSA form. So this is going to be used by the college to determine the student's eligibility for federal aid for sure, state aid probably, and some schools will use that to calculate the amount of institutional funding that the student will receive. Too into the weeds now to talk about signing electronically, but just know it's an all online process where a student will get an identifier, an FSA ID, and they'll sign it, and one parent will get one as well and sign these forms electronically. You'll do one, and then you'll list all of the colleges that you want to have receive this information. It'll be sent electronically to those schools. So you don't do a FAFSA for each school. One FAFSA sent electronically to all the different colleges. And then a little bit about the CSS profile. Remember, this may be required by some colleges and universities. So it's going to be asked for typically by more selective private colleges to determine the student's eligibility for our own institutional funds. So at Reed, we do require the CSS profile. We don't get nearly enough information from the FAFSA. The FAFSA is, if you've done one before, it's going to ask for your income, your taxes that you paid, how many people are in your household, how many people are going to college, how much do you have in your cash savings and checking, that sort of thing. And we need to have, to determine our eligibility for aid, we need to look more deeply at that. We'll ask about the current year that you're providing information, but we'll ask what's happening in the upcoming year. If there's a place to tell the school about your any special circumstances that you have, any, your private school expenses, things like that there's plenty of places for a family to tell us more about their situation on a CSS profile. And the same with the profile, you'll complete one application and send it off to the various colleges. Unlike the FAFSA, there's a fee associated with the profile. It's $25 for the initial application and to send it to one college. And then it's $16 for each report, each college added onto that one. But there are waivers that are available for low-income students. And as the student is completing the application based on their income and family questions, when they go to submit the application, it will let the student know that they qualify for a waiver and that they don't need to make any payment, and they can send it to unlimited number of schools at no cost. And FAFSA and Profile are available on October 1 for the upcoming academic year. So juniors, October 1st of 2021 will be the first day that the FAFSA and the CSS profile would be available for you to complete. I mean, I think that's good to know that that's when you can start to complete them, but more importantly is what is the deadline at the college that you're applying to? So just for an example of what we have at Reed, all of our deadlines have passed for this year, except for transfer students and continuing students. But let's look at regular decision. So a regular decision admission applicant would want to have filed their CSS profile by January 15th, their FAFSA by January 15th. And some schools, a lot of schools that use profile also use a tax collection system called IDOC. You may or may not see that, but IDOC is a place for families to submit all their tax documents electronically to the College Board's IDOC site, and then they transmit that data to the colleges. So you don't have to send your taxes to, 5, 6, 10 different schools. So that's just an example of what our dates and deadlines look like. Every college will have that on the website. So make sure that you're aware of those deadlines, because you don't want to miss opportunities for funding because your applications are late. Okay, so you've applied for admission, you've done your aid applications. The admission office notifies financial aid that a student is admitted. And then what we will do is put together a financial aid award notification package. They're called different things, but basically it's just something to let the families know what they're eligible to receive. And the way that we do that is the way that colleges do this for need-based aid. Again, from now on, I'm really talking about need-based aid. Merit is its own thing. That's something separate, not through the financial aid office. But what we do is we look at the cost of attendance at the college. We subtract from that the family's expected contribution, and that equals family's financial demonstrated need of the student. So schools are going to work to put together a financial aid package that will provide the student with the assistance necessary to help them go to school. So something of note is fewer and fewer schools have the resources to actually meet the families. It's called full demonstrated need. So a school that meets full demonstrated need is going to look at this formula. There's the financial need, and that school is going to come up with an aid package that totals that financial need. Last time I looked, I think there's a little over 60 colleges across the country that meet full demonstrated need. So just be aware that if it's a college that doesn't have the resources, or that's not their philosophy to meet full need, there might be a gap in that amount between what they've given you and what you need to come up with in addition to your expected family contribution. And just as an aside, so Reed is a school that meets 100% of need, and we are also a school that does not offer merit scholarships. So all of our aid is based on demonstrated need. So when we're putting together the package and we're calculating need, everybody knows you get that bill with tuition fees. If your student's living on campus, there'll be a charge for room and board. But there are other expenses. Those are your direct costs. That's billable. They're on that bill. But think about purchasing the books and the supplies and transportation. If a student is attending a local school, it's not going to be as much as they're attending a school on the East Coast. Personal expenses, they still have to buy their shampoo and their toothpaste and things like that. Or maybe they're living off campus in an apartment and they need to cover rent and groceries. Those costs are also taken into consideration when calculating demonstrated need. So we combine the direct and the indirect costs and use that as our starting figure in the equation. So of course, those costs are going to vary from college to college. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know how that one got in there. I'll go back to the other one. Sorry about that. Just a little bit about cost. So let's use an example of cost of attendance of a private college versus a 4-year public or a community college. You can see the wide range in costs, but in the sample family, their family contribution is calculated at about $10,000. So this family needs $55,000 more to attend a private college, 16,000 more for a public, and about 3,000 more to go to community college. So again, a college that is going to meet your demonstrated need is going to try to come up with a financial aid package that will total $55,000 or $16,000 or $3,000. I apologize. I have no idea why my EFC is over here. I am not on my A game. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. Been a long day. But a little bit back about the EFC, the expected family contribution. Again, this is coming from your FAFSA, and it uses a federal formula. The formula used by the CSS Profile is actually proprietary, so we can't share that too much detail on that. But the FAFSA, this is public knowledge. Your EFC is going to stay the same, your federal EFC, based on whatever college that you're looking at, essentially. But what it does consider when it's calculating this, it will look at the parent income and the student income. It looks at the number of people in the household, the number of children that are in college, and it will look at student assets. So always looks at that. What it may consider is parent assets. So I say may consider because first of all, when you're filling out your FAFSA, I think it's really important for families to know that the FAFSA does not consider the value of your retirement account. So that's not considered an asset. And your home equity is not considered an asset. So it's then down to looking at things, cash savings checking, investments, 529s, that sort of thing. So it's looking at that. And then based on the age of the older parent, it sets aside a portion of that. And then it's a percentage of that. On average, maybe about 5 or 6% of the value of the asset is actually used in the formula. So I know a lot of families get worried about saving for college and having assets, but really the main driver of the formula is income. That's where the majority of most families family contributions is coming from the income. The FAFSA doesn't look at financial commitments. It doesn't look at the amount of mortgage a family has. It doesn't look at consumer debt and those types of things. So that's just a little background on family contribution. I did want to speak briefly about net price calculators, because I think all of this is really good to know how NEAT is calculated, but I think it's more important, what might my aid package look like at a particular school? So if you haven't explored net price calculators yet on different colleges' website, I would encourage you to do that. Every college is required to have a net price calculator. You should just be able to put it in the search bar from the main page. But what this will do is give you an idea, not of the sticker price, not of the 60 or 70 or 80,000 if you're looking at a private college, but the net price. And it will give you a really good estimate of what you might receive based on students who attended the prior year who have the same or similar financial circumstances as yourself, what their aid package looked like, what their grant basically was. So it'll calculate for you what your net price might be. So sticker price minus grants and scholarships, not loans or work. Just don't even look at that yet. Get to that net price. Sticker price minus grants and scholarships. That's what you're going to be working with. So it'll give you an idea of that. So I think that's a really good tool. It helps you to kind of have a little bit of a head start on what that might look like for you. It might widen your choice of colleges. If you're a little nervous about thinking about even applying to a private college, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at net price calculators. And if you have questions about the results that you get, you can contact the colleges. We like to walk through that with families. They think, oh, this can't be right. And we can go through that with them, and maybe they made a mistake on something. So we like to work with that as well. So if you haven't done that, I think that's a great idea. And then once we've done these calculations, we notify families, or students actually, not the family, but the student. This is their aid application. This is their aid package. They will receive an award notification from the school. It might be in the form of an email. It might be mailed to the family. at Reed, we send an email because we know families are very anxious to receive this information, but we also mail a paper packet to families because we want to make sure parents are seeing it. So they will open the mail and look for that financial aid right across the big envelope. In addition to the aid package, where it'll outline this much grant, this much loan, this much work, it also provides more information about how to find a campus job, more information about the loans, more information about payment plans, different things like that, due dates for the bill. So a lot more information in that paper packet that we mail, but that's, that can vary from school to school. I would say look at these carefully because I'm sure Lauren has seen a number of financial aid awards over the years. They don't all look the same. And I think colleges are getting better at showing what the cost is and what the aid is. But I think there's still some out there that, when mine were granted, it's been a couple of years, I'd have to go to the website to find out how much their tuition was and then do the math myself, where I think most colleges, and Lauren can speak to this too, I think they're getting better at transparency and providing the information that families need to make that decision up front. So look at them closely, make sure that what you're looking at, is that a grant or is that a loan? Is that work or is that, so you're looking at that and comparing, making sure that you know what's the gift aid, the grants and scholarships versus the loan and the work portions of the award. And then just briefly before questions, special circumstances. Again, I talked about the CSS profile where you can tell the college more about something unusual that's happening in your family, but sometimes circumstances change after students have completed their aid applications or maybe even after they've received their financial aid packages. So I would check the college's website to find out how you can let the school know about a special circumstance, or maybe you received your aid package and something has changed. So you want to talk to the school about maybe appealing your package. You can look on their website. Sometimes it's good to just give them a call, kind of talk through the situation, and they can guide you through, okay, it may be good for you to do this form to tell us more about lost income, or, oh, it sounds like you have some unusually high medical expenses. Fill out this form or tell us more about this. So you can check with them on that. You do need to notify the colleges separately, though. There's not like one repository of places one place that you can list all this and have it sent off. But each college will look at that. They might ask for more documentation, especially if we are going to make a change to what's been reported on a FAFSA. There's a lot of federal regulation on what we can and can't make adjustments to. So we may need to ask for additional documentation going forward. And then we review that and notify families if they are eligible for any additional assistance. So I talked so quickly. I don't know. I hope that went okay for you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. That was.
I know it. I was like speed talking to little squares. I'm like, I love Zoom. I love that. I would never be talking to people in California right now in February, middle of February. So I like that aspect, but I don't know.
Any general questions that folks had? I know that's a lot coming at you fast. And Sandy, if you're able to send me the slide deck as well, that would be great for
I will do that.
me to send on to folks. But
sure.
Got any points of clarification? Or you did such a great job. Look how comprehensive that was.
Or they're sleeping. I'm not sure. No, I see some people that are awake. I know I didn't put you to sleep.
Indeed.
And you know what? And I know it can be overwhelming. I like what Lauren's doing, just kind of breaking it into these chunks for you. I think that's really good. As many of these as you can go to and learn more. And as you visit colleges, hopefully you'll actually be able to do that. They won't all be through Zoom. Go to the financial aid presentations at the colleges that you're looking at. If you're on campus, or even, we do a lot of Zoom. I just did an ACAC one on Sunday. So there's lots of things where you can get more specific about how it works at that specific college as well.
we do have one question. With regard to EFC, is there an income level per household that's a good indicator of eligibility?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. No, because there's so many variables to that, I would say that if you're not sure about whether or not to apply for financial aid at a school, I would always recommend doing it the first year. And perhaps you don't qualify that year at that time. But then let's say something happens and there's been a change in your situation, you're not starting from scratch. The financial aid office has that information. They can say, oh, this was in your case, maybe 2020 income, but oh, 2021 is this and 2022 might be that. But you have a baseline for that. So I always encourage families for that 1 year. And then if nothing changes, you don't have to continue to apply. And I should mention too, you do apply for aid each year at the different schools that you're applying to. So yeah, that's the best way I think to do it. There's no like grid that you can say, I made 75,000, so my EFC will be this, and I have 4 people in my house and 2 people are in college. So yeah, it's, it's looking at the zip code, it looks at state taxes, it looks at the ages of parents. Yeah, there's a lot of other things that go into the federal formula, and the CSS profile is even more extensive.
So can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, but there's 2 other quick things in the chat. I just
okay.
want to address those quickly first. The first is asking if a college doesn't require a CSS, can you still fill one out? And that's, I think, generally no. Like, I think if they don't ask for it, they don't want it. Would that be true?
Right. And they wouldn't be set up to take it. It's a relationship with College Board. Yeah, there would be no benefit to completing a CSS profile. There'd be no use for the school to use.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's also a question about, son's a junior, can there be sort of a practice completion of the FAFSA early? And I think the answer to that is no, right? You need to just do the real thing. Is there a place to practice the FAFSA or preview the questions that are on it?
Yes, you can go to the FAFSA site, and they have a PDF of a FAFSA. And you can look at those questions there. I would say don't be afraid of the FAFSA. You can be slightly afraid of the CSS profile because it is much more complicated. But the FAFSA, I think the last information I got from Department of Ed on that, for a first-time filer, they're usually getting that FAFSA done in less than 20 minutes. And continuing, when you do it the next year, your demographic information is saved. It's down to like 7 minutes. So and especially if you do the IRS data retrieval, where they're going to take that data right from the IRS, that can speed it up for you too. It is not a difficult form, but if you do get stuck, you can call the school. Okay, am I still being recorded, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like the school has some good information about helping you fill out a FAFSA versus the Department of Ed helpline. Did I say that okay?
Very, very
okay.
Correct. So
okay.
yes.
Okay, good.
I will also say there are a lot of resources locally, and Jewish Family and Child Services does FAFSA completion workshops every fall with community members, family members. So, and I will push out when those things are happening, but I'd really encourage you, if you have any questions or concerns about doing it, to just go to one of those, because you've got like live assistance in the process.
Yes.
So Leah, why don't you bring us home with your question?
So my question is, we've been through this before and we filled out the FAFSA and it was on a national basis. So they didn't account for the cost of living in the Bay Area. The speaker mentioned that there have been updates, and I'm hoping it's more than just the title of the form, but is it also going to take into account the cost of living differential?
I don't recall that when I looked at the upcoming changes for 23-24 academic year. I don't recall that being something that they're looking at. But we do look at it with the CSS profile. So when families are, if it's a profile school, that we have a cost of living adjustment indicator that takes out a further allowance against income based on a family's zip code.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
All right, well, I think we're going to pause there since it is 10 after 5, and I want to respect everyone's time, and especially Sandy, because you probably want to get home before it starts snowing.
I'm from Minnesota. I'm fine.
I appreciate everyone's time tonight. I will
Yes.
send a follow-up email out with some more resources tomorrow, and then, of course, we'll get some reminders about March 8th as we get closer to that. And junior parents, remember that we have another coffee next Thursday morning at 8 a.m., so you could bring some financial aid questions to that as well. And sophomore parents, you will also be getting an invitation to just a casual bring your own coffee on Zoom in a few weeks so that we can start connecting with each other about your kids' process. So thank you, Sandy.
You are welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for letting me get to know you a little bit and share some information, and best of luck to all of you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.